The official formation of what is known as the Board of Peace. This board has the chance to be one of the most consequential bodies ever created, and it's my enormous honor to serve as its chairman. Every country, just about every country, wants to be a part of it.
President Trump presiding over the signing ceremony for the brand new Board of Peace in Davos. That was earlier this morning. His goal for the board is to promote peace around the globe. 25 countries make up the initial membership, but the president says all are welcome to join. And the president is about to board Air Force One to head back to the White House now. Over the course of about 2 days, he accomplished what few believed was ever going to be possible. He successfully cut a deal on Greenland. And here he is with Fox Business' Maria Bartiromo.
We'll have everything we want. We're getting everything we want at no cost.
So the Golden Dome will be on Greenland?
A piece of it, yes, and it's a very important part because it's everything comes over Greenland. If the bad guys start shooting, it comes over Greenland. So we knock it down. It's pretty infallible. It's amazing. We're talking about it. It's really being negotiated now, the details of it, but essentially it's total access. It's there's no end. There's no time limit.
The New York Post cover had some fun with the big news, calling it Dane Deal. Well, because you know Denmark. Senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy has more. Peter.
And Harris, according to President Trump, they're going to get all this new access to Greenland for free. But to iron out the finer points of the deal, President Trump is dispatching the most trusted members of his team, Marco Rubio, Steve Witkoff, and J.D. Vance.
But what if a foreign country launched a missile at the United States of America? We would need control over the Arctic in order to shoot that missile down. Our entire missile defense system depends on that Arctic security.
This morning, the Interior Secretary Doug Burgum likened the Greenland push to acquiring Alaska, which went from a remote outpost to a thriving part of the United States. So at a minimum, whatever this move winds up being called, it is about bringing Greenland into the fold more and keeping both China and Russia as far away from the United States as possible.
Greenlanders want to be prosperous. They have a lot of ports where they have no awareness who's coming in and out of the country. And so the U.S., I think, will have ways of knowing who's above, on, and below the sea that Denmark and Greenland can't accomplish.
And any minute, we will see some live pictures of President Trump in Zurich boarding Air Force One for the long flight across the Atlantic back home. They might even fly over Greenland, so he might see it out the window. But as he does, there are bulletins crossing that Greenland's foreign minister just said she thinks this is all good news out of Davos. Harris.
Really? I think that's the first time we've heard the response from there, correct?
Yes, and this is the foreign minister who was seen in a lot of still pictures after some meetings last week looking kind of nervous about what she'd heard behind closed doors. And so for her to come forward and say that before the deal is done, that she thinks this is good news, that would seem like a big step towards actually getting this thing finalized.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing it to us, Peter Doocy, outside the White House. A new op-ed lays it out this way. Trump's small ask for Greenland would be the real estate deal of a lifetime. Axios lists 5 winners from Trump's Greenland deal: Trump himself, Denmark, Greenland, Europe, the markets, and Davos. In focus now, Tommy Pigott, State Department spokesperson. Great to have you. First of all, we're learning more and more. So what can you tell us that is unfolding right now on this? And you just heard for the first time the foreign minister now talking about, yeah, this is a good deal. Peter Doocy said she looked a little nervous from Greenland, wondering what was coming.
Well, the real winners here are the American people, are the security of our alliance. What we saw is President Trump identifying a problem, a real problem, and taking steps to address it in only the way that President Trump can. He is truly showing that he is the deal maker in chief. And what we're seeing are efforts to enhance the NATO alliance, enhance the security of Greenlanders, enhance the security of the United States. That is something that only President Trump could have delivered. And he's truly making this argument about addressing these modern threats we all face and making us all safer.
Tommy, talk to me about the military component of this, though, because it's two-pronged. It's that and it's also rare earth. And I will get to the rare earth in a moment. But just the military, when he took that military force off the table, it seemed to shift things a little bit. Did that make the deal easier?
Well, I think ultimately what made the deal possible is President Trump. And President Trump has a suite of options, and he keeps those options open until he decides to rule them out. And ultimately what we saw over the last couple days, weeks, really going back to the beginning of this administration, is the art of the deal in action. This is something that presidents have wanted to see happen for many, many decades.
Yes.
And President Trump is actually taking steps to make it happen. It's a credit to his leadership. It's also a credit to the vision he has to address problems before they become problems. President Trump's really putting us on a great footing here and making sure that our security is truly enhanced.
Yeah, well, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Alaska Purchase, Greenland was originally part of that. That part of the deal didn't hold together. And so all these decades later, we see what we see now. Greenland is the 8th place in the world when it comes to the reserves of the rare earth minerals needed to create and operate technology for pretty much everything. Most of those reserves are still untapped in Greenland. The Arctic nation is home to key minerals needed for consumer electronics, defense systems, medical devices, advanced computing, and clean energy. This is a critical part of that deal. Tommy, talk more.
Well, ultimately, this is about access. This is about access for the United States. It's about access from a military perspective. It's about access from a perspective from those critical minerals. These are part of all the concerns that President Trump laid out really from the beginning of this administration, talking about those critical minerals, talking about the encroachment of our adversaries onto Greenland, talking about the defense of Greenland, the NATO alliance, our defense, modern threats, the Arctic, the list goes on. He's been identifying these threats, and what we're seeing here is President Trump addressing these threats and also identifying opportunities that can make us all prosperous. That's the art of the deal in action, and President Trump is showing once again why he's the deal maker in chief.
So is it time to hit the shores of Greenland as Americans? I mean, they don't have a lot of infrastructure there yet. Does our footprint in those small areas that I understand from the potential deal that's coming, we will have control over small footprints, probably near military bases? Talk to me about that.
Well, as President Trump said, details on this will be forthcoming, and I don't want to get ahead of the president and as these discussions are being finalized. But again, I think it's important to stress the context here of President Trump identifying this problem. Everyone saying a deal wasn't possible, don't bring this up, ignore this. President Trump saying, no, I'm not going to ignore this threat to our security. I'm not going to ignore the opportunities. He's having these hard conversations. And the people to have these hard conversations with are our security partners. So we're seeing President Trump in action, once again putting America first. But when he puts America first, that actually helps the NATO alliance. It helps everyone in terms of our security and prosperity.
Talk to me about the Board of Peace, if you can. 25, upwards of 25 members now.
Well, this is something that came out of the Gaza ceasefire deal that was announced. Unprecedented global coalition that was put together by President Trump that saw the release of hostages, that saw humanitarian assistance entering Gaza in a way that wasn't being looted by Hamas. And so what we see now is President Trump building on this unprecedented global coalition, trying to see the implementation of peace and prosperity, making sure that we're seeing these peace deals put into action. President Trump, who has negotiated 8 peace deals around the world in just a year, an unprecedented advancement of peace. We're seeing this Board of Peace being an effort to see that long-term peace and prosperity. So a really historic announcement that we saw in Davos here, building on the huge momentum, the global coalition that President Trump has put together.
Yeah, I'm looking down at my notes. It has been 103 days since Israel and Hamas, the ceasefire agreement, came into place. And of course, we've seen some bubbling up, and the president and the Secretary of State Rubio have said, you know, that can happen, but the peace is holding, the ceasefire is holding. And so that is a huge development in all of this. It is great to have you on the program. Tommy Pigott, come back.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.